Hello, I'm Stephen Missick. I want to do a quick Voice the Word program. And what I want to talk about in this episode is Israel and the Assyrians.
Jesus was an Aramaic-speaking Jew of the Middle East, and the Assyrians are Aramaic-speaking Christians in the Middle East who have endured persecution for over 1,000 years. Join Voice of the Word Aramaic Bible teacher, artist, and author Stephen Missick as he examines the Bible through the ancient languages, peoples, lands, cultures, and times in which it was first revealed. Research the Scriptures, rescue persecuted Christians, and restore the Church to its Semitic roots. And now, Voice of the Word.
Until recently, conservatives could be counted on to be dependable and staunch defenders of Israel. And that's beginning to change with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. Just a few weeks ago, Tucker Carlson had the sister of George Stephanopoulos, who's a radical, hard leftist. Both George Stephanopoulos, their father, and Agapia Stephanopoulos, mother Agapia Stephanopoulos. Now, this woman is a Greek Orthodox nun. She's an American of Greek heritage who was assigned to the Holy Land, and she worked in Bethlehem. She is not a Palestinian, but she worked over there, and she's a Hamas sympathizer. And now, Tucker Carlson is a Hamas sympathizer, and now Tucker Carlson is advocating. I mean, this is hard for me to believe or conceive of or imagine that anybody, any decent, rational person would do this. And he goes, I'm a Christian all the time. And he states that he supports Sharia law on his program. Sharia law is draconian Islamic law, which, Muslims are put in superior status above Christians, and Christians have no rights, really, but are subjects. There's the Ummah, as the Muslims call it, which is the nation. And as a non-believer, as a kafar or an infidel, you cannot be a part of the Ummah as a Christian. You have to denounce Christianity and confess the Quran and Muhammad to have full rights and enjoy citizenship. And it's dangerous for Christians. We see it in Pakistan with blasphemy laws, where it was Asia Bibi, this woman, she didn't do anything wrong, and they were going to kill her. Or we had a man in Afghanistan who had to be smuggled out because he was of Muslim background. He converted to Christianity, and they were going to execute him. That's Sharia law. That is Sharia law. Sharia law is cutting someone's arm off for stealing and stoning adulteresses to death. And I guess back in the late 70s, early 80s, you had this Death of the Princess, where a Saudi princess. So here she is. She's a young woman. And she's forced to marry a decrepit old man, probably can't even function. And then she meets a young man her age, falls in love, and then she's brutally murdered for that. So that's Sharia law, and that is what Tucker Carlson is advocating. Watch the Jim Caviezel movie, The Stoning of Sharia M, where this woman was falsely accused of adultery. And just look at stoning. I praise Jesus for the Gospel of John, I think it's chapter 8, where Jesus, in my opinion, my interpretation is that he ends stoning. That's a part of the Old Testament law of Moses that was abrogated. Maybe that was necessary for a barbaric society, but as civilization elevates, stoning needs to be ended. It should be part of ancient history. But this happened, and it's happening throughout the Middle East, throughout the Islamic world. And as long as you have Sharia law, just watch the stoning of Sharia M. Do you think that represents the will of God? Is that just? Look how Sharia law functions. What about Asia Bibi? So I'm absolutely appalled. And honestly, I liked Tucker Carlson for long. Once he got his show on Fox, because I'm a conservative, and I feel like the Republican Party doesn't really speak for me, or until the Trump movement doesn't speak for me or represent our concerns at all. You got the rich country club Republicans. They're just Democrat light. They don't do anything. They don't want there to be... See, that's the thing about Trump. Trump fights back. Trump advances conservatism. Those things are unacceptable. And that's why they try to destroy him at all costs. So, I'm somebody who used to like Tucker Carlson, and now I'm deeply offended and appalled. And why is he doing this? He's taking money from the Saudi Arabians, the Qataris. And I've talked about this in earlier programs. I challenge you to look at it. But Raymond Ibrahim, look at his channel, follow him. And mostly, Raymond Ibrahim is very frustrated because he worked hard to educate people in our government about the dangers of radical Islam and where it comes from, why they believe what they believe, why they do what they do, based on what they say, not what academics say about them. But as an Arabic speaker, Raymond Ibrahim is translating their texts and their speeches in his book called The Al-Qaeda Reader. And he spent 20 years trying to appeal to people in government to take the threat of radical Islam, to seriously what they believe and why, from the Quran, the Hadith. And he's kind of just given up. And it's both parties, really, but it's mostly Barack Hussein Obama, the Democrat Party. So I can understand why he's frustrated. But it's like, why is the reality, and he's right about this, the United States government advances radical Islam around the world. We took down, Saddam Hussein was bad, but compared to what we have now, it's a better situation. If Saddam Hussein remained in power, you'd probably still have a lot more Christians there than are left now. I'm not defending him. I know he is brutal, but he's a lot better than ISIS, is he not? Our policy and the actions of Obama created the environment for ISIS to emerge. We got rid of Assad. Now we have an ISIS fighter as the dictator of Syria. It seems like that's what's happening. Of course, I don't blame everything for Trump, but Trump is, well, let's give this Shara, this Julani, this ISIS fighter a chance. I don't think we should. I think he's killed too many Christians, and I've had enough of this dictator. And this is someone I've traveled all across Syria. I love the country. Been there several times and lived there. Spent months in Syria. So back to the situation, the Holy Land. I'm going to get to a couple of important points. So back to this mother, Agapia Stephanopoulos, and she's supporting Hamas, and so is now. Tucker Carlson's advocated. He's announced support for Hamas and for Sharia law. And it's just shocking, but this is because he's being financed by a terrorist state, Qatar. I've been to Qatar. We actually have a military base there, but that's where Al Jazeera comes from. So I saw this video. This is from Dana Lash's show, and this is an Aramaic Christian in Palestine. He's speaking about Aramaic. I want to look at this clip. I haven't really heard of this man before. I don't know anything about him, but I think it's very interesting. Here he is, claiming to be an Aramaic speaker.
With you can listen all around the country terrestrially. You can watch Channel 347 Direct TV. We're at X, Rumble, everywhere else. I also saw this post on X. The post read, Tucker, I am an indigenous Christian living in Israel. The woman you interviewed is not. I cannot believe how many lies just came out of her mouth. Many people have asked you to interview me, yet you've ignored me. Is truth important to you? Let's talk. And so I went and I looked this gentleman up because I thought, whoa, that's a pretty, because there are a lot of Christians that live in this area in the Middle East, and you really don't ever hear from them. And it was just stunning. I wanted to bring on our guest, Shadi Khalloul, who is the president and founder of the Israeli Christian Aramaic Association, NGO of the Aramaic Galilee Center. And he lives in the Middle East, and he spends his time educating people on the truths of this area as someone who lives it, as someone who has firsthand experience. And Shadi joins us now on video. Shadi, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. I got to get your initial reaction when you saw this interview. What was your first response? What did you think when you started hearing some of the things that guest was saying?
Thank you, Dana, first of all, for inviting me and allowing me to actually expose the truth and the cause of the true Christians, indigenous people in this land. What is the true cause? How they are persecuted? I am a Christian, indigenous, the first followers of Jesus in this land. We speak Aramaic language. We still speak the language and teach the language to our children, to pray in it in the church, to keep the culture of Jesus that he in the same language was speaking. And then some people, like, I don't know, this nun that I never heard of before, came in spreading lies in our name, in our behalf, and now the world start believing that this is the truth of the Christians and how they live in Israel or under Jewish majority.
Now, there are Aramaic speakers in the Holy Land. When I went to Bethlehem, and actually I was in Easter, I was in the Holy Land. I was in Jerusalem for the, this is kind of interesting how they have the holy fire, right? The patriarch goes into the tomb of Jesus and a miraculous fire emerges. I had my candles ready, and you light your candles with the holy fire, and they take the fire from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre all the way to Bethlehem. And while I was in Jerusalem, Bethlehem, you can see the prominent presence of Syrian Orthodox, Assyrian Christians there. And when the Dead Sea Scrolls were first discovered, I think you have the Kando family, it's a Palestinian, Syriac Christian family. They're actually still, so the Bedouins were investigating these caves. They found the Dead Sea Scrolls. They thought they were correctly, most of them are in Hebrew, but several of them are in Aramaic. So they went and they found these scrolls. They thought it was Aramaic correctly for some of them. They took these scrolls to, what was his name, Patriarch Yeshua in Bethlehem, or not Patriarch, it's a bishop. And he recognized these are ancient scrolls, so they were sold in the Wall Street Journal, of all things. And then the scholarly community found out about them. And this is the only oldest copies of the Bible yet discovered, or of the Hebrew Old Testament. Very important discovery. But like I said, when I was at my seminary, the Palestinian Christian family was loaning Dead Sea Scrolls for display at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. I was kind of surprised. And we have George Carraz with Gorgias Press. He helped create fonts for word processing in Syriac, and he's published a lot of books and biblical resources in Aramaic. So this man has done a lot for Aramaic, George Carraz. So this other Palestinian Christian, I just want to put this clip out there from the Dana Last show. I don't know a lot about him. I'm going to try to find out. The situation with Israel is complex, and let's remember that the prophecy is Isaiah 19:25. God promises that he is going to create a highway between three nations, and that is Israel, his inheritance, Assyria, the work of his hands, and Egypt, his people. And that's the way the Jewish people, God's people are just the Jews. We are his chosen people. It's like, well, God has chosen a certain way the Assyrians and the Egyptians too. And of course, I've been to the Holy Land doing archaeological work. I've been there twice. But we have these three nations that God's going to use. Egypt, you have a large Coptic community in Egypt, and a long storied history of Christianity in Egypt, which goes down to Ethiopia. The Assyrian people, also a long storied history. And they spread all the way to China and India. So God's going to bring these three communities together. And I want peace in the Middle East, and I was very excited about, people look at it prophetically and see that everything's falling into place for the Battle of Armageddon. And look, the prophecy is going to be fulfilled. I'd rather have peace and safety over there. Jesus didn't say, blessed are you if you try to create the environment for Armageddon to fall. He said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. We don't know when the Lord's going to come back, and we should try to work with peace, for peace. Now, the Palestinians have been their own worst enemies. If you look at when the UN voted for the creation of Israel, they created two states, a Palestinian Arab state and a Jewish state, and Jerusalem was going to be an independent city-state. So that was the original plan. That would supposedly, the way people talk, that would have made everybody happy. But the Palestinians rejected that plan, and they opted for war. And over the past 70 years, I can understand why Americans are not too sympathetic with the Palestinians, because they support Hezbollah, Hamas, radical extremist Islam. It's hard to be sympathetic with people that support extremism and violence and terroristic tactics. Now, on the other hand, people look at what's going on in Israel. Israel was attacked, and I guess we're on 3 years ago, by these paragliders. They committed Hamas committed atrocities against Israel. It was an invasion. It was an attack. Why it happened, that's a mystery. It's like, how could this have happened? I thought, you had the Mossad. Mossad sees everything. Mossad knows everything. And that gives into a lot of conspiratorial thinking. But whatever happened, innocent people were attacked by Hamas. And thousands died. It was an atrocity. And a lot of people argue that Israel's response is disproportionate. And, the simple people of Gaza had nothing to do with the attack. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sympathy for Hamas in Gaza. I wish that wasn't true. I'm not saying all Gazans support that, and I'm sure a lot of them have been disillusioned by Hamas over the years. But there are people in Gaza who support Hamas, unfortunately. And recently, Israel also attacked a Christian compound. And couldn't explain how that happened. It could have been an accident. I don't know. I'm just saying that I hope this conflict in Gaza winds down, because when Trump was president, of course, this began under this attack happened under Biden. But when Trump was president, we had the Abraham Accords. So one of the things that, like, the Palestinians complain about Israel building a wall, and it's like, look, if that stops, terrorist attacks, because they just had a terrorist attack like yesterday in a bus. Israelis are human beings. The Arab Palestinians are human beings, and we should want peace for everybody. And just pray for peace over there. But God has a plan, I think, for Israel. And there's a new book coming out. We have this Israeli speaker trying to unite the Assyrians, and that's going to be he's trying to get the Israelis and the Assyrians to work together. The book is Jerusalem and Nineveh. The author is Yaakov Maoz. And he's written this new book trying to bring the Assyrians and the Israelis together, because there were a lot of Jews in Mesopotamia who immigrated to Israel. And so there's an Aramaic speaking community that speaks a dialect probably very, very close to Assyrian. And they're trying to create relations between the Aramaic speaking community of Israel and the Assyrian community, international Assyrian community now. So that's very interesting. I'm going to get the book. I'm going to read it and investigate that matter further. I also want to mention Patrick Bet-David, and I talked about this in my speech. And in an earlier video, I was talking about what the Assyrian people need to do to survive. I mean, it's bad that the number of Assyrians is depleted. Probably at this point, 75% of Assyrians in northern Mesopotamia aren't there anymore because of ISIS and other, the war and the conflict. But there could be benefits in having an international Assyrian diaspora. And I talked about Armenia. I think Assyrians get it. It's like, look, the danger is Sharia law, right? The danger is an Islamic majority. If you're in a Christian nation near the Assyrian homeland like Armenia, we could grow and keep that community. That way there's no telling what's going to happen in Iraq, Iran, and that region. Things could go from bad to worse. Maybe things will get better, I hope. But it's a very negative climate with radical Islam. Radical Islam has done nothing but it's a leading exporter of violence and ignorance and destruction the world has ever known. So you have this destructive culture there, and the Christians suffer under that. And the more strict Islam you have, the more problems you're going to have. And Tucker Carlson has lost his ever-loving mind. This isn't about, I look at it from the perspective as a Christian, but the Islamic mentality is a threat to human beings and to civilization. It's harmful to mankind to have this. Look at it. Look what it's done. When I did this chart, and they think that over 200 million in the past 1,400 years, 200 million non-Muslims have been slaughtered by Muslims. And then it's like, how many people died because of Islam? How many Muslims died, in battle? And I think this chart I saw wasn't complete. There's other ethnicities and nationalities that were slaughtered by the Muslims besides what was listed in that chart. So this is probably the greatest disaster the church has ever faced. And it's one of the greatest tragedies that mankind. I mean, India, millions upon millions of Hindus killed by jihadists since the Islamic invasion arrived there. So Armenia can be a type of a safe haven. But there can be, as I was saying, there can be benefits to having international Assyrian diaspora because now we have global support for the Christian minority in the Middle East. It's just you have to take proactive measures to preserve Aramaic as a spoken language. And, I mean, the Western nations are wealthy nations. The Assyrians are achieving wealth. But we also, as I mentioned in that talk, we need our celebrities. We need Assyrian celebrities. People that make, they create awareness of the Assyrian people because a lot of people listen to Assyrian. People like Sam Shamoun, I think, is also, to a certain extent, he's lost his ever-loving mind too, because now Sam Shamoun, instead of attacking the Muslims, he wants to attack just with hatred and vitriol fellow Christians. It's like, it's friendly fire. It's like focus on the enemy, not on why are you attacking Christians, Sam Shamoun. But for a long time, Sam Shamoun was doing a great job. I appreciate what he's done in the past. He might have lost his way right now. Pray for him. Pray for Sam to get back on track, because now he's becoming, instead of shining the light of truth on Islam, now he's damaging and hurting and dividing the body of Christ. So just pray for him. I think he does mean well, but just pray that God would change his heart. And another celebrity is Patrick Bet-David, and he's flying the Assyrian flag on his backdrop now, which is good. But he recently interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm surprised he got that interview. And thank God, because he's confronting Benjamin Netanyahu. And he says, the United States, Joe Biden was not in control, obviously. The Biden administration was Barack Hussein Obama's third term, probably his fourth term, because Obama's still in D.C. He changed residences, but he never really left office, and he's been trying to control the government to undermine Trump from the back. In the background, he's working with the FBI, do the Mueller investigation. I mean, what is Obama doing in D.C.? Why is he there? It's appalling. No president has ever done that before. Presidents retire from politics when they finish their. Historically, presidents retire from politics when they finish their term of office because they have so much power. They have to relinquish it. That's how the Constitution works. But Obama's just consumed with thirst for power. He's lost a lot of his clout, thank God. I don't think he's realized it yet. But there's no way Joe Biden was running the country. Couldn't even walk across the stage. He can't walk upstairs. Can't even talk coherently most of the time. But one of the things that the Biden administration did do was to recognize the Armenian genocide. So Patrick Bet-David, the United States of America, until the Biden administration did that for whatever reason, I'm surprised Obama would be behind the recognition of the Armenian genocide, but it happened. The United States finally recognized, after over 100 years. Actually, I remember like 15 years ago, there's all these old women in wheelchairs that, had seen it. They're all dying off. Probably the last time and they're begging Congress, please recognize, over about 1 million people or maybe more. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but Armenians were slaughtered by the Turks. And please recognize our genocide, that this genocide occurred, that we were the victims of this genocide. And the United States government said, no, we're not going to recognize it because we're beholden to the Turks. And the Turks are emboldened to, they still occupy half of Cyprus. They're allowed to do whatever the hell they want. Just go and kill people and massacre. And, it's the Turks. They can, whatever they want to do, they get to do. So we had the Armenian genocide, and Patrick Bet-David. The United States would not recognize that this genocide happened. And the state of Israel also refuses to recognize that the Armenian genocide happened. And Turkey has been an ally of Israel until Erdogan. Erdogan is a terrorist leader, basically. He's a Muslim extremist. So now you got this Muslim extremist, the president of Turkey. But Israel has been allied with Turkey until Erdogan, and people argue that the attack against Armenians and the Turks. Azerbaijan is Turkish, and recently Azerbaijan went in there and evicted all the Armenians and Assyrians in Nagorno-Karabakh. They stole that territory, Armenian and Assyrian territory, stolen by the Turks. The international community just looked the other way. Shocking and offensive. Now, Armenia and Azerbaijan are trying to do some kind of peace agreement, but that's unacceptable for ethnic cleansing to have occurred like that. And people say that Israel supporting the Turks in Azerbaijan, and there seems to be some evidence of that, which is appalling. But so Patrick David looks at Benjamin Netanyahu and says, I want you to acknowledge that the Armenian, Assyrian, and Greek genocide took place. He gave a tepid answer, but it's not official. So the Israeli government still doesn't. So basically, Benjamin Netanyahu conceded that this genocide happened personally.
This is in America's interest, and he's very forceful about it.
Would the war and the Hamas attack have happened if President Trump was president instead of Biden?
Probably not, but it's hard to say with these maniacs. I think Iran would have been more careful.
I'm curious, did you know the president was going to be saying this?
We're going to take over that piece, and we're going to develop it, create thousands and thousands of jobs.
I'll bet you don't know this, Patrick. If America wants to come in and invest, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
So you would be okay if America takes over Gaza and it becomes something that we control. You'd be okay with that?
Yeah, but it's an American choice. Our victory will be your victory.
Why haven't you yet recognized the Armenian, Assyrian, and Greek genocide that the Turkish did to that community? If you step foot in their country, they're supposed to arrest you. They're calling you a wartime criminal. The offenses you've done, they're calling it a genocide.
It's been a battle that has been going on for 3,500 years. So I'll have to do what we have to do. We'll fight with our fingernails if we have to. A lot of people felt in their gut, but they didn't have the guts to say it out loud.
I don't know if it's come from you, though. I don't know if it's come from the Prime Minister of Israel.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay.
Here you go.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that. Whatever Israel wants, they make a phone call to America. America better do or else. Do you agree with that?
You know President Trump? You don't make him do anything. He does what he thinks is in America's interest, and he's very forceful about it.
With the war...
But the Israeli government hasn't recognized that yet. And there's an important Armenian population. A quarter of Jerusalem, the old city, is the Armenian section of Jerusalem. And of course, like all the Christians over there, they're facing hardships. Their numbers are dwindling. So there is an Armenian presence in Israel that's not doing very well right now. So Israel needs to recognize the Armenian genocide. The thing about this, the Armenians suffered in that genocide. And I don't want to lessen that in any way, how much they suffered. But the Assyrians suffered in this genocide, and the Greeks suffered. It was these three Christian ethnicities, the Armenians, the Assyrians, and the Greeks in Ottoman territory were targeted for destruction. And they pretty much burnt down and wiped out the Christian population in Smyrna. I mean, atrocities were committed against these three Christian ethnicities. And what happens is some people know about the Armenian aspect of it, but not the Assyrian or the Greek. And we need to get recognition. I don't want to, I'm not lessening or in any way what the Armenians suffered. I acknowledge that. I'm just saying, well, what about the tens or hundreds of thousands of Greeks and Assyrians who suffered as well? If we're going to recognize what the Armenians suffered, which we do and should, we need to recognize what these two other groups suffered. And at least the Armenians have a country now, right? The Greeks have a country, the Armenians have a country, but the Assyrians got screwed over, left out. So that means the genocide was more harmful and detrimental. The ones who got hurt the most were the Assyrians, because these other nationalities got their own national independence. The Assyrians were cheated out of that, and still suffering from what happened in the Armenian genocide, the Armenian, Assyrian, and Greek genocide. And Liz Huber, this friend of mine, she's saying, well, probably should just acknowledge each one distinctly. Even though it's one genocidal campaign, I think everyone who suffered in it should be acknowledged. And of course, Turkey has been held unaccountable for these terrible actions. And Hitler is on record for saying that he was inspired to do the Holocaust. He's inspired by what the Turks did. Number one, what they did and how they did it gave Hitler inspiration. It's like, we could try this in Germany. Secondly, it's like, well, the Turks got away with it. If the Turks can commit large-scale genocide, maybe we can do it here in Europe too. The international community didn't care about Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks getting massacred. So, maybe we can get away with this in Germany. So it empowered and enabled Hitler to commit his atrocities. If the global community held the Turks, to this day, the Turks are not held accountable for what they are doing, what they have done. I want to look at this little chart here. I want to show this. This is, we have classical Syriac Aramaic, which is very close to the way that Jesus spoke. But some people, we don't really have a lot in Galilean Aramaic. Classical Syriac Aramaic dates to the time of Jesus. But there are some Dead Sea Scrolls that are in Aramaic, but I don't know if they're in Galilean Aramaic. Now we have later Jewish writings, like it used to be called the Palestinian Talmud. Now it's called the Jerusalem Talmud, even though it's from Galilee. It's written and composed in Tiberias, not Jerusalem. That's kind of a misnomer. But this Talmud, which is the earliest of the two Talmuds, I think it's shorter than the Babylonian Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud is written in Aramaic as well, at least parts of it. But what used to be called the Palestinian Talmud, which should be called the Tiberian or Galilean Talmud, is written in Galilean Aramaic. So a lot of scholars have used that to try to reconstruct the Aramaic of Jesus, even though it's several centuries later, and languages evolve. I mean, look at Shakespearean English versus modern English. It's or even the way people talked. People talk differently, and when our nation was founded 250 years ago, I think we can understand pretty much everything they're saying, but there's some shift in the language from then, and different words are used. There's change. Languages constantly evolve. So we're going to look at this. Sebastian Brock, also, and others have tried to reconstruct in a more pure and authentic, theoretically. Let's try to get closer. And Syriac. Syriac's very close, but let's get even closer to how. Well, the Syriacs. Those are ancient texts, very ancient. It's not theoretical. It's how people were praying and speaking. But these scholars are trying to theoretically reconstruct. So we're going to look at how they Shlota de Yeshua, the prayer of Jesus, Abunan de Bishmeya, Yitkadash Shmak, Tete Mokuthak, Tewe Rutak, Hek de Bishmeya Ap Bara, Havlan Yomedin, Lakman, Demishtan, Washbaklan, Kavinan, Hech Anan, Shabakin, the Kavinan, Wila, Devar, Lan, Lenishon, Ilapatsan, Minbisha, Amin. So it's similar to the Syriac form, but it's a little bit different. But that's a theoretical reconstruction of Galilean Lord's Prayer. Got Steve Caruso doing work on this field. This one is by, like I said, Sebastian Brock also did this. This is by Mike Cook from multiple sources, as it says, probably Steve Caruso and Sebastian Brock, among others, who are trying to reconstruct Aramaic as more authentic and more pure and closer than Syriac, because Syriac technically is Eastern Aramaic. Jesus would have spoke Western Aramaic, but there wasn't really that much. As we can see, it's very similar. These are classical Syriac and the Galilean Aramaic were mutually intelligible dialects at that time, at the time of Jesus. And we have the Christian Palestinian Aramaic, just fragmentary. And the Bible fragments we have in Christian Palestinian Aramaic are slavishly literal to the Greek, which tortures the Aramaic. So if it's a more natural translation, that would have been very valuable. Even though, like the Jerusalem Talmud, it's a few centuries later. I think classical. Sorry, this is Christian Palestinian Aramaic, Christian Palestinian Syriac. It's actually Aramaic. It's not Syriac. Uses a form of the Syriac script, but that, I mean, obviously that's very important to, you know. I think you'd still learn a lot from it, even though it's successfully literal translation of the Greek that it tortures and ravishes natural spoken Aramaic. It's kind of like, why are you translating the Greek so literal that it's not properly structured Aramaic when can't you can see by your through translation that it was originally in Aramaic? Why don't they translate it to more free flowing and natural Aramaic? I don't know, but those are the only scrolls. I mean, we had the Aramaic Gospel of Matthew in Caesarea for a long time. I guess the Muslims went and burnt that up. But you know, there's all these ancient texts we had in ancient times that were lost, unfortunately. So, thank you. God bless you. Join us for the next program, and just pray for me. I got a lot of struggles in my personal life right now that I'm facing. Financial concerns as well. My father passing away in his estate. There's all this turmoil and conflict over that. Trying to do the right thing. Just pray for guidance and harmony and peace and wisdom in these difficult times. So thank you, and God bless you.
Research, rescue, and restore. Help Voice of the Word and Aramaic Christian Ministries mission research the ancient languages, peoples, lands, cultures, and times of the Bible. Rescue persecuted Assyrian Christians in the Middle East and restore Christianity to its original Semitic roots. For Stephen Missick's books, online giving, and other resources from Aramaic Christian Ministries, visit www.stephenmissick.com. Join us next time on Voice of the Word as we research the Scriptures, rescue persecuted Christians, and restore the Church to its Semitic roots.